We continue now at the top of Daf Gimel Amud Aleph and Meseches Menachos. This is Menachos Daf 73a. On the previous summit, the Gemara brought the pasuk of V'chol mincha v'lulav v'hashemen v'chareva l'chol b'nei Aaron tia ish ka'achiv to show that the Kohanim, they eat the remainder of Karban Mincha. Specifically, the Gemara in the previous summit was talking by a Karban Mincha of barley, and the Gemara now is in the middle of bringing a Braisa that's going to use that pasuk for something else. The Braisa is discussing the dividing up of Karbanos, of those portions, among the Kohanim, and the Braisa on the previous summit said, how do we know that we don't apportion Menachos keneged zvachim? In other words, one Kohen takes a mincha and the other one takes a zevach, takes an animal carbon. How do we know that? Talmud Lomer, the pasuk says, "V'chol mincha asher tayafa betanor lechol b'nei Aaron tia ish ke'achiv." The full pasuk is v'chol mincha asher tayafa betanor v'chol nasa v'marcheshes v'al machavas la Kohen hamakriv oso lo sia. That's what the pasuk says. And so again, it says that in the pasuk, and it mentions lechol b'nei Aaron tia. It means to say that they shouldn't divide. They should divide the menachos among all of them. They shouldn't say that one gets all of the menachos and one gets all of the zvachim, etc. And the Braisa continues, Yachol lo yechliku menachos keneged zvachim. Now one might think one cannot divide up menachos corresponding to zvachim. Again, one Kohen is going to get the menachos, the other the zvachim. Shelo kamu tachtein bedalos. And the reason for that is that one doesn't bring a mincha instead of an animal carbon in a situation where there's a variable carbon. Sometimes you have a variable carbon where if the person cannot afford an animal, then he brings a bird. If he can't afford a bird, then he brings a mincha. So you don't go straight from animal to mincha, it's animal to bird to mincha. So maybe we don't divide up menachos against zvachim for that reason. Aval yechliku menachos keneged ofos. Maybe we would divide up menachos corresponding to ofos. This one takes the bird karbanos and this one takes the mincha karbanos. Sharei kamu tachtein bedalos, because the menachos, those are a substitute in a situation of poverty. They're a substitute for ofos. Talmud Lomer, the pasuk says, we don't do that either. V'chol nasa b'marcheshes. Again, l'chol b'nei Aaron tia. It says it goes to all of the children of Aaron. Yachol lo yechliku menachos keneged ofos. Now, one might think we don't divide menachos corresponding to ofos. Sha'halolu minei damim v'halolu minei kemachim, because this is a blood type of sacrifice and the other one is a flour type of sacrifice. But yechliku ofos keneged zvachim. Maybe we should divide birds against animal sacrifices. Sha'halolu v'halolu minei damim. Those are both blood sacrifices. Talmud Lomer v'al machavas l'chol b'nei Aaron tia. Again, it says l'chol b'nei Aaron tia. Yachol lo yechliku ofos keneged zvachim. One might think we don't divide the ofos keneged zvachim, the birds, against the animal karbanos. Shalolo asiyason biyad, because these are done with the hand. V'halolo asiyason b'kli, and these are done with the kli, with a vessel. The animal karbanos are slaughtered with a knife. The ofos, it's malika, it's with the thumb. Avol yechliku menachos keneged menachos. But maybe we could divide one type of mincha against another type of mincha. She'elu ve'elu asiyason biyad, because both of those are with the hand. Talmud Lomer v'chol mincha blulav Hashem and l'chol b'nei Aaron tia. It says in the pasuk v'chol mincha blulav Hashem, and that's the pasuk again that we used on the previous summit. And so again it says l'chol b'nei Aaron tia. And the Braisa continues, Yachol lo yechliku machavas keneged marcheshes. One might think we can't divide a pan mincha against a deep pan mincha, umarcheshes keneged machavas, or a deep pan mincha against a pan mincha. Shazu maseh koshin, because this it's harder in terms of substance. V'zu maseh rachin, and the other one is softer. Avol yechliku machavas keneged machavas. Maybe we can divide a pan against a pan, umarcheshes keneged marcheshes, and a marcheshes against a marcheshes. Talmud Lomer v'chareva l'chol b'nei Aaron tia. Again it says l'chol b'nei Aaron tia. And yachol lo yechliku b'kachei kachim. Maybe this is just true by karbanos that are considered kachei kachim, holy of holies. Avol yechliku b'kachim kalim, but one can divide by kachim kalim, by those of lesser holiness. Talmud Lomer ish kiyachiv. It says in the pasuk ish kiyachiv v'yimal toda, and it says v'yimal toda. And the full pasuk over here, it says v'chol mincha blulav Hashem and v'chareva l'chol b'nei Aaron tia ish kiyachiv. That's what it says in pasuk Yud. And then it goes on, imal toda yakrivenu v'hikriv, etc. And so therefore we say as follows, kashem shein cholken b'kachei kachim, just like we don't divide up when it comes to kachei kachim, kachein cholken b'kachim kalim, so too we don't divide up when it comes to kachim kalim. And ish, and it says in the pasuk ish, and that means ish cholek. It means that a man is able to divide ve'afilu bal mum, and even if he has a blemish, he's part of that division of the portions for the kohanim. Ve'ein katan cholek, but a minor, if he's not an ish, if he's a minor, he does not take a portion. Ve'afilu tam, and even if he is unblemished. And so in any case, that's the question from this Braisa. It seems that the pasuk is used for something else. And the Gemara continues and answers, Hahu mikol nafka, this brisa that's learning from the pasuk is actually learning from the word kol in the pasuk. That's actually the source of this brisa. Therefore, it's possible to learn two things from this pasuk. But the Gemara continues and asks, V'apikde l'chid Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, but isn't kol used for the teaching of Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda earlier? That was the teaching of Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda that essentially says by a minchas mafet has to be either entirely chalos or entirely rakikin wafers. It can't be a mixture of the two. That was learned earlier from kol. And so therefore, how can we learn two things from that? And so the Gemara continues and says, Elahahu mi vichol. Rather, the Breiser is using the fact that it says vichol. It has a vav over there, and so therefore, again, we're able to learn an additional teaching. And the Gemara continues, Ravina Amar, Ravina says there is a different source for the idea that the Kohanim eat the remainder of Karban Mincha. And again, on the previous Summit, it was specifically discussing the remainder of Karban Mincha of barley over there. But in any case, there's a different source. Asya midatani Levi. It comes from what Levi taught. The Tani Levi, because Levi taught, the pasuk says, L'chol karbonim, l'chol minchasim, l'chol chatasim, l'chol hashamim, for all of their karbonos, and lists various kinds of karbonos. And we learn as follows, Kol karbonim, when it says Kol karbonim, that's l'rabos log shemen shel mitzorah. That comes to include the lug of oil of the mitzorah. And Rashi explains, this is Rashi Ksav Yad, there are two versions of Rashi. See the previous Summit, there's a comment on the video in the previous Summit that explains that in brief. But in any case, Rashi Ksav Yad says, l'rabos log shemen shel mitzorah, it includes the log of oil of the mitzorah. Sheyehi mashenisher min hazos. The point is, whatever remains from the sprinklings of the oil, nechol kohanim, that is eaten by the kohanim. That's what we're learning from this pasuk. That's what's being included from the log shemen shel mitzorah. And why would we think otherwise? Salkadai techamina. One might think min ha'esh. It says from the fire. Kasav Rachman. It has to be something that's left from the fire. This doesn't involve fire by the log shemen shel mitzorah. And so kamash malon. That's what the pasuk is teaching over here. Also, it goes to the kohanim. And the brisa continues l'chol min chasam. Then the pasuk says l'chol min chasam. Again, it says l'chol karbonim and l'chol min chasam. And that's l'rabos minchas omer minchas kenos. That comes to include the minchas omer and the minchas kenos, which is the mincha of the sota. Those were the two minchas of barley discussed in the previous summer. Again, this is the source that the remainder is eaten by the kohanim. And sal kadai techamina, one might have thought v'achlu osam asher kupar bohem amar Rachmana. The pasuk says that those who get an atonement they eat, meaning only a kapara that's for atonement. That's where we say the kohanim eat the remainder. And Rashi, the Ksav Yad, explains asher kupar bohem v'darshinan kohanim ochlim. We darshan from that pasuk the kohanim eat ubai lemischaprim, and the owners they get the kapara. Hilkach midi the kapara achli kohanim avol hanachlo. Therefore, something which involves an atonement the kohanim eat, but the kohanim eat from. Otherwise, they don't eat. And over here, it's not an atonement. Again, it says Amar Achmana. The pasuk says asher kupar bohem v'hai lahatir koasi. And over here, the omer is coming to permit. It's not coming for an atonement. V'idach nami, and the other one also, the mincha of the sota. That's not an atonement. Levarer koasi, that comes to clarify sin. And so therefore, these one might have thought are not included. Kamash malon. That's what the pasuk is teaching, that it is included. And the Gemara continues. The brisa continues. L'chol chatasam. It says in the pasuk l'chol chatasam. L'rabos chatasov. That comes to include. This halacha applies by the chatasov as well. The bird chatas. Salkadai techamina nevelahim. One might think this is considered to be a nevela. The idea it's a nevela. There's no shchita going on over here. Again, it's malika when it comes to a bird carbon. Kamash malon. That's what the pasuk teaches. It applies here as well. And l'chol hashamam. It says in the pasuk l'chol hashamam. L'rabos asham nazir v'asham mitzorah. That comes to include the asham of the nazir and the asham of the mitzorah. But the Gemara continues and asks, asham mitzorah behed yaksibbe. The asham mitzorah, it's already explicit in the pasuk that the kohanim eat from there. It says ki kachatas ha'asham hu lakohen. It says like the chatas, the asham is to the kohen. So ella, rather, the Gemara says l'rabos asham nazir ki asham mitzorah. It means to say that the asham nazir is eaten by the kohanim like the asham mitzorah. Sal gadai techamina, one might have thought lahachshir kaasi, that really the asham of the nazir is to render fit, and therefore it shouldn't be included in this halacha. Kamash malon, it's coming to teach us that it is included. And Rashi Ksav Yad explains, Ela asham nazir shehei nechol kasham mitzorah. The idea is the asham nazir should be eaten like the asham mitzorah. And then one might think that the nazir's asham is lahachshir asi leteglachas uletame mesim. It renders him fit in terms of shaving, in terms of tomas meis, to be able to be tamei meis. Umidi de lav kapara lo achli kohanim, and something again that's not an atonement, maybe the kohanim shouldn't eat. Kamash malon, again, that's what it's teaching us. It's teaching us that in this case as well, the kohanim eat from it. And the Gemara continues, Asher Yoshivu. It says in the pasuk Asher Yoshivu, and this is the same pasuk. The full pasuk over here is Zeh yeh lecha. This is for you. Mikodesh hakodashim min ha'esh kol karbonim lechol minchasam ulechol chatasam ulechol hasham Asher Yoshivu li kodesh kodashim lechahu ulevanecha. That's how the pasuk concludes. And so therefore, when it says Asher Yoshivu, Zeh gezel hager. This refers to gezel hager. And Rashi explains the gezel hager. What is that referring to? Techsiv ha'asham hamushav la'Hashem la'kohen. It says that it's going to be returned to the Kohen. This is a situation by gezel hager. One steals from the ger, the convert who has no relatives. Is the point? Who does one pay back? It ends up going to the Kohen. That's what it says in Bava Kama. We're talking about gezel hager. So the pasuk is teaching that goes to the Kohanim. And then it says l'chahi ulevanecha means to say shelchahi ulevanecha. It is yours and your children. Afilu lakadesh bo isha. It's completely yours. You can even use it for kiddushin. One can use it to marry a woman, to give it over as the kiddushin. And the point over here is this payment by gezel hager. Again, when the Kohanim are receiving this payment, it has no kedusha whatsoever. It can be used for anything. Again, even lakadesh bo isha. And the Gemara continues. Amar Rav Huna says, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ayin Gimel Amud Beis.